So to get into the study itself, we started with 116 families. In some of those, there were no betrayals. They just denied any, I mean, it could be just because they were lazy and didn't want to do that part of the survey packet, you know? That happens a lot. But we had 91 families in which the husband, the wife, or both of them reported an interpersonal trauma, a betrayal that they needed to forgive. So 87 wives and 74 husbands is what that comes down to. Some of them were married to each other, obviously, if you do the math. So we gave them surveys at time one, and that's what we've analyzed in this study. We also invited some of them into the lab, and we videotaped them. That's the fun part of research, right? Not really, because then you have to code it. But we videotaped them having discussions with them, you know, just the two partners, and then we put the child in there and had them have a discussion with their child, not about the betrayal, but just about an issue having to do with the child, like homework or something. And so I have videos for 35 families, and the exciting thing is I have 2 undergraduate research assistants this semester who are eager to look at those data and see what we can pull from that. Now, 35 families isn't a lot, but we're going to see what we can come up with. And then we followed up with surveys again a year down the road. Families move, get divorced, drop out. They don't want to do your study anymore, even if you're hanging mall gift certificates in front of them, you know. So our sample is much smaller at time 3, unfortunately. We measured whether or not there was a betrayal. Of course. And then if there was a betrayal, if they acknowledged, yeah, there's been a betrayal, we wanted to assess their forgiveness. So we used what we call the forgiveness inventory, which is a 3-stage measure looking at, you know, those different attributes that we talked about. The emotional upheaval, the working through, and then the moving on stages. Trust in the relationship, what we call dyadic trust. Conflict tactics. When they're having a disagreement, what kinds of strategies do they tend to use? Do they negotiate? Do they sit down and have a calm discussion? Do they throw things? Do they stomp and leave the house? All kinds of behaviors. And then parenting alliance. To what degree do they feel bonded as a parenting team? Not necessarily how well they co-parent. I think it's different. I might discipline our child differently than my husband does. You know, we have different strategies because she knows how to work each of us differently, but yet we have a very strong parenting alliance. And then for the children, we had them tell us, these children were about 11 years old on average, we had them complete measures telling us what they thought about their parents' conflict. So they described certain properties of the conflict, and then they described their own feelings of threat, like threat to the family integrity, for example. So in terms of conflict properties, how frequently do they argue? How intense is it? Is it resolved? And kids know. Even if it's resolved behind closed doors, they pick up on this. And then threat in terms of how well can I cope with this when this happens? What does it do to me? And then fear of maybe the parents splitting up, for example. This is the betrayal prompt. So when you get a survey and this is up there, it's probably from me. No, you would know. Please focus on some event or series of events in which you feel your partner did something that significantly hurt you and disrupted your relationship. And then we give some examples. I don't know how I feel about the examples because we don't want to steer people in any one direction, but well, you'll see from the examples, we didn't really. People put down what they felt hurt them. Here's some examples. This is what you've been waiting for. She left me in jail to hurt me. He made a financial decision resulting in a loss of over 40 grand, drinking too much, forgot to relay a phone message. You wonder what that phone message was about, you know? My husband of 23 years just had his 3rd affair. Opened a secret banking account. Bought a painting without consulting me. I just found out that 7 years ago he had an affair resulting in a pregnancy. She did not do anything for Valentine's Day. It runs the gamut, right? I really want to know what was in that phone message. That's what I think about. So those are the things that people are reporting. Some examples, I thought the most illustrative of the range. People are reporting have hurt them. We most often think of infidelity. Yes, I had to put these pictures up there. Tiger and Elin, and Mark and Jenny. It's in the news all the time, infidelity, unfortunately. Oh yeah, that was the fun stuff. Now to get into the analyses and the results. Don't worry, I know you can't read that. It's by design. Just kidding. I copied some things out of the article itself and put them here, just to sort of illustrate for you how we tested these hypotheses. So, because I think I could just talk about this all day long. To boil it down a little bit, we wanted to know, how do positive and negative forgiveness, those two dimensions, the positive forgiveness and then the unforgiveness, how do those predict marital satisfaction? And then we wanted to know, because they were obviously related, they did predict marital satisfaction in the directions that you would think. More positive forgiveness, great. More, it's so confusing, more unforgiveness, bad. I was about to say less unforgiveness. Gets complicated. We wanted to know if the reason they contributed to marital satisfaction was because of increased conflict, worse conflict tactics, or if it was because of trust being violated in the relationship. So we threw them in trust and conflict tactics as mediators to see, when we throw those into the analysis, do they eat up all the variance? And what we found was that the negative part of forgiveness, that unforgiveness part, was still predictive of marital satisfaction, even when you take into account the intensity of the conflict and the decreased level of trust. So, yeah. Oh, it keeps going on. Okay. You like this, right? This summarizes that table for you. What we found was that more unforgiveness was predictive of less satisfaction. What seems to be in the middle of that, and this should really probably also say poorer conflict tactics. It seemed to be that not only did satisfaction decrease because we disagree worse, we do worse things when we have conflict, and I don't trust you anymore, but also simply because of the forgiveness level. It's that unforgiveness dimension, that grudge holding, vengefulness, withdrawal, that kind of stuff was still predictive of satisfaction. So that says to us, well, it's important that we address forgiveness. When we have families, couples coming in for therapy, let's deal with these betrayal issues. In terms of parenting alliance, what we found is that forgiveness is predictive of parenting alliance. So more forgiveness and less unforgiveness predicts a stronger parenting alliance, if you can follow those double negatives there. But we wondered, is that because of marital satisfaction? Like, is the reason our parenting alliance is okay is because we're still happy as a couple? Does that make sense? So we threw them all, we did the series of analyses, and these are the last stage. And we found that marital satisfaction did eat up some of that variance in parenting alliance. But what also remained significant was positive forgiveness. And what's interesting here is all of these analyses we conducted using, the husband's own variables to predict his own outcomes, the wife's own variables to predict her own outcomes, and then we flipped them, switched them. We used the husband's variables to predict the wife's outcomes and the wife's variables to predict the husband's outcomes, and we found basically the same pattern, because we didn't want this to be the result of mono-method or shared method variance. It's my surveys, I've got this sentiment that I'm putting into these surveys. Of course my data are going to be related. So we switched it, and we looked to see if his information could predict hers and vice versa. And we found basically all of these patterns held up.